Looks like we have we only have a few people here. I'll give some folks a chance to show up. Can people hear me?
Yeah. We can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. While we're waiting for folks to show up, I'll just throw out some brain candy for folks. Hang on a second. That's weird. Christian, can you give me screen share? It's not allowing
allow you to share your screen?
No.
Look in the bottom of your Zoom window.
Yeah,
Sorry?
it doesn't show up.
It's weird. Josh, are you sharing his screen?
I see someone's screen.
Wow.
Yeah, but
I just did that to test.
Yeah.
I just upgraded to Mojave and it was
Oh, known issues. There are known issues with Mojave and Zoom.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
You update Zoom before joining the call? Greg?
I didn't update Zoom. I could potentially update Zoom.
Of course, the one day you want to share something like...
Yeah. That's craziness.
What about the other machine, Greg? In the other room?
I could potentially do that. Yeah, I just put the documents on this machine.
Okay. Of course.
Wow, that's really. I wonder if it. Edit, moving, start share. Aha, that works.
Very... Okay, there you go.
And so I just wanted to throw out some syntactic sugar that Rolang developers might find exciting development. I'm just putting the last one in.
Oh, just while we're waiting, I want to make everyone very clear here. So I talked to Kenny and Greg yesterday about keeping the physical recording of this meeting to an hour. But I am willing to stay 30 minutes every week, at this time, after the meeting's concluded, for people to hang out and talk about what they just experienced. But I will be capping the recording at the hour unless instructed by Greg or one of the board members. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Thanks, Christian.
Yep.
Thank you for mentioning that. All right. So now, just before we get started, we can have people mute. Thanks. Before we get started with the dev update, just wanted to throw out there that a lot of Rolang developers have been felt that this kind of thing for sequentializing the inputs is akin, and I agree, it's akin to the kind of callback hell you get with Node.js. But there's a nice natural fix for that kind of thing, and it all comes from the fact that we take the for comprehension syntax as a basic element of the language, which means that we get to have lots of different monads that we can unpack and desugar in this. And in particular, we can compose monads and unpack and desugar the compositions in terms of this for comprehension. So this is actually a lot cleaner and simpler, right? We just simply introduce another kind of semicolon here, which essentially means, which represents the join of the sequentialization monad together with the monad that's associated with the channel itself. And so you get this nice, clean, straight line semicolons that you might expect in a sequential language like C or Java, and it unpacks in this way. And you can pull a similar kind of trick here, where you have you can get synchronized output, where you don't get P unless there's a handshake that proves that the value has been received, and that turns out to be easily expressed here. Oops, there's a typo here. Just put a comma. And so what you do is you make a fresh channel for your handshake. You send the value along with that channel, and you don't fire off P until you get a value on the handshake channel. Of course, that means that that inputs have to also be correspondingly ready for the handshake. So you'd have to have a corresponding notation for the for that knows that it's got to respond to a handshake. And you can do that in a number of nice syntactic ways, but that gives you the basic flavor. Now, in general, just to be slightly more precise, we kind of want to do something like this. The translation of this is, that way we can do the recursive call like that. And similarly, for this one, the translation of this, and this allows us to do the recursive call. So if there was a similar syntactic construct inside P, we'd go ahead and do this expansion. And then finally, we have a similar one here, which is just to be able to store values in variables without having to send them off to a channel beforehand. And so that becomes this one. Oops. And there we go. So these are nice, crisp, clear ways that we can add a little syntactic sugar to Rolang and get some bang for the buck without a whole lot of mess and fuss in terms of upheaval to the language. This gives us a fairly crisp, clean way to clean up a bunch of code, and also shows how Rolang is already set up to have these sort of nicer abstractions, usage patterns or conventions. So the language design has been set up in this kind of minimalist approach to begin with, and then we can slowly add pretty gadgets like this in a crisp, clear way. You can see we've added 3 new language features to Rolang on a single page. And that sort of speaks to the language's sort of internal consistency. With that, I think we've got probably enough people to move on and get the dev update. Kelly, are you ready?
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen here. And let's see, one more thing. Throwing into the chat window the link to the document that I'm sharing, so you're welcome to follow along on your own device. Hi, everyone. We are delivering community update number 47 today. We are in the midst of a 1-week sprint. This is atypical for us and reflects the recent changes in the team, as well as making sure that we're taking some time to reprioritize after those changes have happened. In many ways, the changes that are happening are now really focused on positive changes that we can do to assure that, number one, we're delivering the absolute best for Mercury that we possibly can, and number two, that the team is set up to do that. So we're adjusting some systems and processes we have in place to better facilitate that eager run towards Mercury. We are also starting the recruitment and interview process to build up the team where there are gaps, or to augment the team to help support this aggressive Mercury plan. The upgrade to Java 10 is complete in the development branch. So if you are a node tester or a dApp developer who likes playing with the cutting edge of the software as it comes out of development or is in the testing branch, you absolutely must update to Java 10 at this point. The next release of the node will include upgrading to Java 10 for everyone. So we're looking forward to delivering that. The choice to switch to Java 10 largely has to do with garbage collection. There are some features in there that we were eager to take advantage of. We did a analysis of Java 10 probably about a month ago now, and it really looked like a positive move for the platform. So that's why we've made that choice, and that's what will be coming for sure in the next release and is in development today. The Rolling team is working on improvements to tests related to the name registry and the interpreter. Work continues to proof against Stack Overflow errors. That was work that was happening last week, and it continues into this week. Additionally, work has been happening to refactor to improve stability of the code. In short, there was a mixture of the use of F and task produces, as well as a mixture of unsafe run sync and task delay. And because there was a mixture, it was creating some instability. So a decision was made to move forward to use a generic F, and then to limit the use of task to boundary classes. And so that work is taking place, and it's actually almost done. Danyar continues work to persist the DAG on disk. That the bulk of that work merged just yesterday, and now the work is in progress to make sure that tests are in place and that we can deliver the new DAG API. The Casper team, we have some blocking bugs for testnet functionality related to the Genesis ceremony, block passing, and assuring nodes process transactions and blocks in the correct order. All of these have fixes that are in progress, and we plan to test that as a team tomorrow. Look forward to our Tuesday test to fully test that next week. We're working on improving our test suite for Casper features. As Casper has grown, the test suite hasn't always kept up in a great way, so we're backtracking and making sure that we capture all of that. And then work is in progress to restart work that was left off related to cost accounting. Mateusz was leading the way on that. He's no longer with the team, so we're very grateful to Joe Denman and others on the team who are stepping in to make sure they understand where the work is and what needs to happen next. So we look forward to that work starting next week. The Node team has largely been focused on bugs, investigating, and helping to support teams improve tests and bug fixes where needed. The storage team has also been doing a lot of bug investigation. Dominic came in with a win today on a particularly tricky bug related to unknown root, and he's starting to investigate now how to fix that. And then finally, the work to separate thread pools in our space was completed just the other day, and we're going to start performance testing against that. That will probably result in some other fine-tuning work going forward in the R space area. The SRE team is planning for migration to new infrastructure. We've been operating on Pyrofix's infrastructure, which we have access to through the end of the month, but need to start a migration process to move to the co-ops infrastructure very quickly, and without a lot of delay for the development team, as they rely on that very heavily. And then they are also investigating test failures and performance improvements related to CI/CD. As we talked about last week, there are currently blockers to testnet. Testnet today is down. There are bugs that we know of, and there's bug fixes that are coming in, and we plan to test those tomorrow. And again, we'll test them on Tuesday, and hopefully get to a place where we can fully relaunch testnet, and so that others can play with it as well. Finally, tomorrow there's a group of dApp developers who are coming together. These are community members as well as participants in portfolio companies, looking to make sure that we have support for dApp developers going into Mercury, so that they can do what they would like to do to deliver and develop on the platform. A lot of this work is currently captured in the Epic Core 1162. The conversation will be based on that tomorrow, and we'll look forward to making sure we have all of those things, or as many as possible, for Mercury to help support dApp development on the platform. Are there any questions related to what I just said?
Yes. So Kelly, did you say that there was a repro now for the root not found or unknown root?
Yes, Dom found it early this morning. I don't know all the details on that, but he found it. Reproduced it and is trying to investigate why it's happening.
Well, as long as you guys have a repro, I have no concerns that the team will find it. It's just getting those repros in this non-deterministic setting is.
It's very difficult, and it's it really, you know, when someone on the team pops up and says they figured out, you know, been able to reproduce a bug, there is great cheering all around. We're all very happy because it's not easy.
I was a little bit downhearted when I heard from Kent that the other bug fix, the non-determinism bug, was not the source of that. But now that you've got a repro, we're in much better shape.
Yeah, it is. Bug sleuthing is a big deal in this type of environment.
Absolutely. Good. Any other questions from other folks in the community? Okay.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kelly. A great update. I really appreciate it. All right. So moving on, then, Kenny, you have a report card update.
I certainly do. Just a moment. Okay. Let's see here. So progress report for November 14th. Starting off with the election updates. So I will be removing from here the ones that have been completed after this week. But just to review that the transparency will be the first gap report of financials will be due in January 2019. So it'll be the fourth quarter of this year. There's currently a working operational roadmap. It also says plan of action on it. The link here will be in this when it goes onto the blog, this report card, you'll be able to click on that link, and I'm starting to get some feedback on that, so do appreciate that. But it is a working document, the roadmap, or at least the plan of action for now. The roadmap will probably be or that will evolve into something more visual, more like a Gantt chart, and then going out through at least Venus and possibly beyond that. Conflict of interest policy has been finalized. So it's also been published to the legal docs on GitHub. So there's that link. So you'll be able to see that. Member participation in governance. There's currently a working draft of what a format would look like as we would publish to GitHub and have a similar process to an improvement process for an item that is important, that needs discussion. So the idea here is if we publish something to GitHub, then the conversation can be threaded within that particular topic itself, as well as have a clear template that describes what an important decision is, what its title might be, and when that decision needs to be made. So that will go into implementation mode likely next week, unless there's some other input on the draft. So the IOB 5, the monetary policy, still here. You can see the link to the addresses for those different wallets that are holding those different amounts, as well as we have an open ticket now for the specification of the Mint contract. So this will likely take several weeks or months, potentially even to fully spec out. But this will be the implementation of the rules, like the 1/3 rule, for example, or any of the other rules that are specified in the monetary policy, and the amount of interest or the amount of rev going back to validators, everything. So as this gets fully more specced out, this is what we'll be presenting as an update. The RChain improvement process, we actually have changed the name, something more like CHIP, RChip, is kind of our working name for this process, just because the RIP just has so many other meanings. We didn't really want to label that, but there are meeting notes from the inaugural meeting, and there's a to-do in the meetings to define working group rules, procedures, and members, which that document has been created. It's just not very well fleshed out. But likely we're going to be taking a RACI model to this. So this is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed, of which we know all members will be informed, and there will be some members and staff or leadership that will be accountable, that kind of thing. There was an amendment to the bylaws, and that has also been completed at the first board meeting in November. So there are currently still 2 open seats. So this was deferred and has been will continue to be deferred. There still has not been a decision about what to do with those open seats, but that is an item of open business. Of the vice presidents that were defined in the first board meeting from November, there were these departments or these vice presidents that were defined, and so now there's active job descriptions for each one of these titles. So these are not finalized yet, but as soon as they get a little bit more documented, we'll go ahead and share that out. And these job descriptions are a brief description of the day-to-day, also some of the requirements, and these VP positions, we're not necessarily looking to fill them immediately, but we do want to spec them out so that we have an idea of what these look like. And then there was also a board meeting on the 9th. So in the link here is a link to the minutes. I've actually published the minutes to GitHub this morning, so they are there as well as some back minutes that were hanging out from October and September. But as a quick overview of what happened in that, the Audit and Finance Committee charter was approved. So Kevin Goldstein will be the chair, and a GitHub repository has been created for the Audit and Finance Committee with the charter as the README document. The conflict of interest policy was approved by the board, as well as like I mentioned before, the link has been published to the legal docs on GitHub. And then where there was a discussion about changing the quorum for special meetings. So the decision was that no change would be made to special meetings, but the executive committee would be tasked with developing a petition mechanism for the membership. Lastly, is that ID verification is a requirement for membership, and this was further clarified by the board. And those were the items that we discussed. So this will go up on the blog here fairly shortly, and if there are any questions, I can go ahead and take those now. All right, thanks everyone.
Awesome. Let's see. Okay, we don't have much more in the way of updates, so we're perfectly happy to open it up for discussion. And if there's no further discussion, we can keep this meeting short since we have a lot of work to do on our side. Any topics or issues that the community would like to address?
You just mentioned that Jonathan and Multi and the governance channel on Discord have been taking some steps, some behind the scenes, in the establishment of a governance working group. I'm not sure how that overlaps or interacts with Kenny Rose things, but I think we probably need to get on the same page there.
Sure.
Yeah. So thanks, Jim. So in that conversation, an executive committee is typically a subset of the board in normal other situations. Our executive committee isn't that exactly, but the idea here is to what some of the functions that the governance committee or the executive committee was doing would could likely be done with a different kind of style of committee. But I don't know that there's been like you said, I don't think we're on the same page yet about what we might want to do in terms of those two different groups. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, and Greg, what do you think about that too? I know you had some opinions on this matter.
No, I think that answer is spot on. I mean, I think you've covered the important pieces of that. It did occur to me that we haven't heard from the marketing folks. I wonder if Fabian or Derek want to chime in and talk about their work so far, or yeah, what do you guys think?
Sure. I just posted Kenny's blog, so it's a progress report, so it's up there. I got one formatting thing to take care of. Bigger picture, just focused. I just published the podcast on our song with Kayvon and Fabian, talking a little bit about the technical aspects on what's behind the hood there, and what actually, there's a lot of talk about our song, but we're actually talking about what it does and what the features are and what we're looking to do with it. which I think is important. That's been missed. I did get to talk to Raul from Testloop, and he'll be on the podcast next week. And he'll also be joining this meeting to talk about what Testloop is doing, one of our portfolio companies. And I think it's absolutely fantastic, some of the visions he has for mobility systems and how blockchain will interact with that moving forward. So those have been the two main focuses in terms of portfolio companies and applications we have going on here. And that's going to continue to be my focus at least through the end of the year, along with working with a team right now with a lot of website change, like the main co-op and developer website. So we've been, there's some community members, Dan Connolly and Peter Mormon and Ned and myself and Ian have all been meeting to try to get everything on the technical side, as well as merging with the aesthetics and trying to keep it looking good and sharp. And so we're making a lot of progress on the back end with that. So hope to have a new website launched very soon that will be completely up to date with everything that's being presented here. Do you have anything, Fabian?
I'll just add that Derek and I completed a number of documents that are circulating internally to focus on a couple of new initiatives to drive up numbers and usability on our platform. And we're targeting initiatives that will help us out as we move towards mainnet. That's all I've got to report for today.
Excellent. No, yeah, absolutely. That was those discussions. It's funny. There's lots of movement, but so much of the movement we're not yet at liberty to talk about. So that's yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of really focused in on completing projects and versus putting out concepts and ideas. It's really right now we're in that zone of let's get things off the ground. That way, as we walk towards mainnet, we are really ready as a team and ready with some initiatives that will really bring the platform out into the world and allow us to get international press.
Yeah, agreed. Actually, you brought up a point I was raising with the dev team earlier this morning. I think we need sort of 3 channels for testnet. So we already have an internal testnet channel on the developer server. But I want to provide kind of a co-op to community about testnet. I mean, we do have this channel on the community hangout where we're giving status of testnet, but I think also a Discord-based channel or some other channel like that is going to be good to go from co-op to community regarding the status of testnet, because that will that's how to keep the fingers on the pulse of mainnet. And then the other thing that I think is going to be important is a community, sort of a bat phone like channel, where validators and other highly vested community members can get in touch with us directly about issues that they're facing with testnet. I think that's also, as we get closer and closer to mainnet, when there are red hot issues, we need to be able to sort of bump those up to high level attention. So a bat phone like apparatus is going to be something that we want to make available, but used sparingly, right? We don't want to send up the bat signal at every juncture, or it will just not be attended to very well. But so I think we need 3 basic communication lines for testnet. Any thoughts, comments about that?
I think we have some building blocks in that space. As you mentioned, there's the internal, the dev team clearly has one. We have in the past used both the development and the node testing channels in the public RChain Discord to surface information related to testnet. We also have, we do have a mailing list of sorts for people who have self-selected to be informed about issues related to validation. So that I think there's a building block towards that bat phone. I do think that we should be concerted, we being marketing and program management and dev team, in terms of how we both bubble up and broadcast information, as well as how we filter down and make sense of information that's coming in related to testnet. I would very much like that to be a collaborative effort.
Agreed, 100%. Yep. Good. So let's see. I honestly think we've covered most of the issues we want to cover today.
Actually,
Speaking of testnet, what's the current plan or schedule for incentivized testnet?
We don't have one right now. That I'm
Fair
not even
enough.
sure that there's a budget for it. That's something we need to revisit.
Okay, cool. And I do want to give an update from RChain Asia, and this is really, really fascinating stuff, which is that a province in Korea just elected a minister whose platform was that he wanted to turn his province into a blockchain headquarters for the planet. And they've already gotten a 300 megawatts data center committed to the province. They also are committing $400 million to a blockchain center of excellence. And they're I've been in Korea for 2 days now, and they're super excited about RChain, and they want to have RChain people come and work in a facility that has both lodging and office spaces and supplies and whatnot. So anybody that wants to take a break and come to Korea and do your RChain things from Korea, you have a nest here. And in addition, in Seoul, in the embassy district of the capital, there's another location with 5 bedrooms and office space where you can do your RChain stuff from Southeast Asia with the full support of the Korean government. And they have 220,000 companies that they've targeted in Korea that they want to be adopting blockchain. And I think that RChain should take advantage of this incredible opportunity. So if you're interested, reach out and I will choreograph.
Cool. So, I mean, you do raise an interesting point. I mean, we're as we're thinking about moving into Asia, we need to think about a local model there, and the relationship of that local model to
Yeah.
to the cooperative development that's developing mainnet, and then the relationship of that to governance. So, what are your thoughts on this, Jonathan?
Well, as it stands right now, this is an offer to RChain. So I don't know that it means anything with respect to governance. It's the RChain project, whether it's RChain Co-op US, RChain Europe, and in fact, after the RChain EU call, I've gotten 2 people interested in coming over. One of whom is actually an expert in Korean blockchain issues. So I don't think it has anything to do with governance right now. It's just an open community opportunity for anybody that's in the RChain project, regardless of which jurisdiction or department or status as a volunteer, community member, staff member, or contractor.
Okay, so basically, it's a place to land in Korea.
It's a place to land and work and live even, because there is lodging.
Cool. That's awesome. Right now, we're at an advantage because a lot of the dev are co-located in Poland, and other dev are located here on the West Coast and in Seattle. So we're getting some advantages there. What kind of advantages might we get if we get some people on the ground in Korea?
Well, I don't see any value in relocating devs. I know as a digital nomad that if it takes me a while to make my workspace that right, that perfect. And
Sure.
when I've been a coder, to relocate as a coder would have been just disastrous to me. But anybody who's writing or doing education, developing training materials, doing marketing, doing business development, any of those other things that are less mission critical right now. If you need a refresher and you want to feel that you're being supported by a government that is embracing blockchain as an essential part of the fourth industrial revolution, as the prime minister was calling it today in a meeting, as opposed to being in the United States, where blockchain is kind of an afterthought and you have to fight for it. This is a super enthusiastic thing, and it's being supported by the president of Korea as well, President Moon, and the woman who's spearheading it is a former member of the United Nations Future Forum.
Mm-hmm. So
this also ties us into the UN.
That's wonderful. I mean, one thing I'm curious about is to how do I say this? I mean, obviously, it would be great to pursue these relationships, but do you think the relationships are best pursued by RChain US or RChain Europe or some other entity, or what's the best way to handle the relationships?
Well, RChain Asia currently consists of me and Jocelyn, and Jocelyn lives in Korea, and I'm based in Singapore. So we would be the hosts. As far as administration, that's to be determined. RChain Asia does not exist yet as a entity like RChain US and RChain Europe. And we currently exist on the good graces of RChain US. So I don't know quite how to answer your question.
I'm just, I mean, I don't either. I mean, for what I guess what I'm trying to get at is I think it is really important to have, on the ground legal entities in various regions. That's sort of what I've been driving for since the late spring. Is to, yeah, and I think you and I have seen eye to eye that it really makes a difference to have locale-based organizations rather than try to do this all from a central hub like RChain US, largely because the time zone and language barriers alone are
they're devastating.
Yeah, exceptionally difficult to cross, and when you combine them, it's really, really challenging. So I mean, but and then this then raises to me this idea of governance, right? If on the ground, if we all agree that on the ground we need some kind of entity that's going to develop these relationships, what kind of entity should that be? And I think that's where I was going with the governance question. I don't have good answers. I'm just to me, I think these are really fascinating issues. And
right. Well, I have my thinking. I have incorporated a legal entity in Singapore because of the very many obvious benefits of incorporating in Singapore, but I have not yet decided, or I have not yet committed it to being an RChain entity. It's just like a placeholder that I may choose to, in collaboration with RChain US and EU, turn into an RChain entity. So basically I was doing the advanced work so that at such time as it made sense to legally formalize this as an RChain entity, I had all the paperwork and everything in place. Another nice thing about incorporating in Singapore is, and I think I've mentioned this in a previous call, is that they will there are government grants for hardware, which could include big iron for validators for startups. Big iron for startups that for us would be validators, and also they have funding for paying for employees to be trained in new technologies of interest to the Singaporean government.
So this one would be where I would be quite interested, is if we could set up an arrangement between groups like that one in particular, but groups like that, and the portfolio companies to provide, because like if they could provide hardware for each of the portfolio companies that was committed to running a node, that would be an enormous win.
Absolutely. Oh, and I forgot to mention that one of the portfolio companies is actually a major partner in this South Korean province. Switch is contributing to the $400 million facility in some ways, and they're also involved in the 300 megawatt data center that's being set up for Microsoft Azure and the blockchain initiatives in South Korea.
That's awesome. That's really, really good.
Yeah, and 300 megawatts is actually the largest data center on the planet.
Yeah, I could believe that. So maybe you and I should find some time to see if we could shape up this idea of how much hardware could be provisioned for the portfolio companies, and what would be the shape of such a partnership. Because if we could get that off the ground, I think that would be an enormous win.
Well, I mean, duh, I just realized, wait a second, you've got a 300 megawatt data center in South Korea. Why am I thinking about Singapore alone?
Yeah, exactly. So let me pivot, since you brought Jeff Bezos to mind, given your background. Have you seen the announcement of the Ethereum consensus? I'm sorry, the consensus partnership with Amazon to bring a blockchain market?
That must have happened in the past 2 days. No, I have not.
Yeah,
I think it was announced yesterday.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any more intel on this point?
Not yet, but I have got, being here in Seattle and coming from the e-commerce world, I have quite a lot of friends at Amazon, as well as in the blockchain space out at Consensus. So I have taken it upon myself to start asking some questions. I haven't got any answers yet, but I will hopefully have some interesting news to report back at some point.
Yeah, well, Joe Lubin and I have been, exchanging emails. We're trying to get on each other's calendars. I don't know when that will happen. Yeah, so I might also ask Joe.
Okay, I do know the CEO of AWS, so we're actually friends, and he's contributed to my past projects. So maybe I should spring him a ping.
I think that's probably a good idea. That's a good idea. Awesome.
Greg, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What is the co-op's position on the Bitcoin Cash hard fork? Because I truly believe that is what's caused a $10 billion crash in Bitcoin in the last 24 hours, and Ethereum losing $3 billion in value. If you look at Poloniex, Bitcoin SV, which is Craig Wright's chain, is trading 12% higher, and ABC, which is Roger Ver's chain, is trading 17% lower. Now, Craig Wright has publicly said that he will destroy Bitcoin and ABC, which means that there's probably a large market crash coming in some sense. Someone's losing money somewhere in this. So if there is money to be lost, where does that put the co-op's position in terms of its crypto holdings?
We're largely out of crypto, except for a little bit.
Good. That's very good. I guess that's my only question, because I mean, I would urge everyone to watch the market if you're overly leveraged right now, because the fork is happening within the next 20 hours. So just throwing it out there.
Thank you. That's good advice. Okay. So on that bright note,
I would like to just mention Tampa Bay Shards, and their attempt to build a model for validator pools and community. The structure, again, it's not going to be a cooperative itself. It may be cooperatively run. In any case, what we're doing with implementing the social ledger is developing the social networking platforms. We have Africa, Croatia, and of course Tampa Bay, and the Collab, and RChain US has their domain. But we just started with a brand new instance of the social ledger. So it's not populated yet with our actual activities, but you can see that we have activities and teams set up for corresponding to the CoLab teams, and we've begun to populate that. And you can see the CoLab shows people engaged in the channels within the CoLab. And we have within the CoLab, and then we have this is well, we have Europe, we have Croatia. I mean, we have Croatia, we have Africa, and we're slowly building up the network associations, the social networking associations that may become independent cooperatives at some point.
Cool. Thank you, Jim. That's very interesting. All right. So unless there's any further questions, I move that we adjourn the meeting, since we've had the last 3 run over by many minutes. Maybe it's time to claw back some of those minutes so we can get on with the work. Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you guys all, and we will see you again next week.